Hey guys, this is Amber from NotableInk.com, and I'm so excited to be joining Altenew's very first Instagram hop. This hop is all about saying it with flowers and celebrating their 50,000 followers, and I chose Build a Flower Cattleya to showcase their trademark elegant florals. So here's the stamp set here. We're going to be using the one outline image, and on the back you can see how beautifully they layer together. I'm going to stamp my images in Limeade Crisp Dye ink, and that is so that the lines will blend into the background. I want to do some Noline watercoloring today. I've cut a mask with the included die set, and this is just from some premium copy paper, and I'm just using it to determine what arrangement I want. The paper that I'm stamping on is Saunders Waterford High White Rough Paper. The reason I bought this paper is because I did research on what is the whitest watercolor paper that I can find. This is what I came up with, and I absolutely love how well this paper performs. So you'll get to see how well the colors move. Here's my inspiration photo, so you can see that the orchids are primarily this limeade green, and then they have that pop of magenta. So I'm going to show you a few of the different areas. Most of the watercoloring I do is wet on wet, but the stems I painted directly onto the dry paper. So using a number 4 round brush from the Silver Brush Company, this is the Black Velvet line, I bring in a thin line of fresh leaf, and then I blend that out with lime and limeade. And all of those greens are from the Spring Bouquet. When I move on to the pink that I'm going to do, that is also from the Spring Bouquet, and I'm only going to be using magenta. So now I'm moving on to a wet on wet technique, and the reason I'm showing you this leaf in particular is, I guess these are all petals, is because I used too much water, and you can see it there pulling up. So I dried my brush so that I could suck up that excess water, and then I'll come in with my shadow. So I do a thin layer of clear clean water, and then I bring in a little bit of the limeade and let that feather out, and then I bring in my darker shade, which is fresh leaf, do some shadow, and then I'll blend that out with the mid-tone, which is lime. So I'll show you one more of these. And because I've been doing more alcohol ink, I've been using my alcohol ink markers, my artist markers more frequently. I found that when I was doing this watercolor, I was almost trying to treat it like my alcohol markers. So you can see me kind of flick the brush like I'm using a marker. And I also found I was painting like I was drawing. So almost using the brush as a pen or a pencil, which I thought was interesting. It's just kind of, I guess, muscle memory. So I let that petal that you see there dry a little bit, and then I'm coming in with the fresh leaf to give it a little bit of definition. And then this petal has a fold in it, so you want to do the main part, or either start with the main part of the fold, but let the one section dry before you go in and do the fold so that they don't bleed into each other and you have a separation between those two areas of the petal. So I'll move on. So the areas that you see that are still white are all of the areas that are going to have fuchsia. So I waited to do those until the end, and I do need to add green to those petals. So you can see my inspiration photo is there, and I have it for reference. So I'm going to add the green to this petal, and then we'll move on to the magenta so that you can see that. So a note about this paper. So this watercolor piece went extremely well for me. It did take a while because there's a lot to color, but it really wasn't until I was watching the feed from this as I'm doing the voiceover that I'm realizing how well this paper performed and how it made it so easy. Normally I struggle with watercolor. It's not a medium that I use very often. But this I was really impressed with this paper, and like I said, I didn't really realize that it had made it so easy for me until I was watching this back. So it's a paper that I would recommend. Again, I didn't really buy it for the performance. I bought it because I wanted a really white paper. When I did cards for the Build a Flower Dahlia stamp set, I did one card in watercolor and one card in layer stamping, And the difference between the two papers, the watercolor paper I was using and the white Neenah, was so stark. That's what really prompted me to go on the search for a whiter watercolor paper. So that's how I ended up with this. And I have to say, it's really amazing. I love it. So, okay. So I added a little bit of green there, and you can see that I've kept it more washed out, which is how it is on the inspiration photo. And after I'm done adding the green to all of these flowers that are going to have pink, I let it dry overnight, and then I'm going to come in with a number 2 round brush and start adding my magenta. So for all of these, I'm doing a wet on wet technique. So I covered the whole petal in clean clear water, and then I'm going to start dropping in the magenta. Now for the pink, I'm not using all 3 shades. I'm only using the magenta, and primarily, you're going to see it on the next petal that I do, I'm primarily placing the color at the base of the flower and letting the water draw it out to the tip. I will add some shading to, a couple of the edges or around the flower just to add a little more dimension and depth. This is the coolest. This is I so enjoyed coloring this particular petal, you guys. I don't know, to me, this was just magical. So I've covered it in water, and I'm just going to keep filling my brush with pigment, and I'm going to keep pouncing it right in that little corner up there. And I'm going to keep doing that so that water and pigment keeps getting added to the petal, and look how it just wicks out to the edge. So based on my inspiration photo, I needed the ends of the pigment on the petal to be feathery, and I wanted it to not blend into the green, and of course it wouldn't because the green is already dry. I just wanted it to feather out and blend into those green ends. So you might want to lift your paper a little bit to get it running if it's not moving as much as you like. Now in this corner, I wanted a stark line there because this is where the petal folds, and so that's where it's going to cast a shadow. Your darkest area is going to be right underneath that fold. So I'm just bringing that pigment down and making it darker in there so that I've got that nice casted shadow. Here's another one where this one wasn't moving quite as much, so I added a little bit more water, and I'm just lifting up my paper so that I can get it to run. And here I did need to touch just the tip of where that water was, and then you can see it ran really well. So I continued with the rest of the blooms in the same way, and you can see the finished piece here. And I felt like it still needed more dimension. I was a little nervous to continue to do that with watercolor. So I just got some polychromos pencils, and this is the first time that I'm using them. The other pencils that I have are Prismacolor, and I have to say I so enjoyed the polychromos. So now I'm not adding a ton of color here, and because I already have the watercolor underpainting, I'm not really needing to do a thick layer of pencils. So when I've done coloring with my Prismacolors before, I've done more full-on coloring. So it's not so much of a fair comparison, but I didn't get any wax buildup with these pencils. And I think they might be oil-based. I think they're a different formulation to the Prismacolor, but I definitely enjoyed working with these. I'm so excited to have them. When I purchased them, I ended up getting the 36 color set because I felt like anything larger than that would be too overwhelming for me to pick colors. But so I'll have the colors that I've used listed in my blog post, and I'll have the 36 set linked down below in the video description. But so basically I'm using 3 different greens, or maybe it's 2 greens and a yellow, and I'm just adding a little more dimension. So I'm kind of darkening up where the shadow should be. I'm adding some highlights with this bright lime green, and then I'm also adding some yellow. So right where the magenta feathers out into the green end, I'm going to add some yellow in there, and it creates just the hint of a little bit of a coral color, which is really pretty. Now, so I still felt like there wasn't enough depth. So now I'm coming in with small touches of black. And the key to the black is that you really want to use some restraint. You don't want large areas of black. You want to keep your black pencil sharpened so that you have a nice sharp point so that you can add just really small thin lines where you need to. So I'm darkening up anywhere there's a fold and where there would be a casted shadow. And then I'm only going to show you this one petal, but I'm just adding just touches here and there to where there are curves, where there would be a casted shadow. And I think it just makes a world of difference to the overall look and feel of this piece. So, but again, you want to use some, you want to use some of your stain. You don't want to outline the entire image because then you might as well have just stamped it in black from the get-go. You just want to add small touches here and there. And so if I've gone too dark in any area, I would take my lighter greens and I would blend that out a little bit to tone the black back. I also used just touches of white here and there if I felt like I needed a brighter highlight. So I'm going to add my sentiment, and I'm pretty sure my sentiment, even though I'm using a Misty, is just slightly crooked, although it's a little bit of a bouncy text, so I can't really tell, but I'm going to ignore that. So I stamped it in Obsidian black ink, that's the pigment ink, and because this is such a rough paper, I did need to stamp it twice. So I've just added a little bit of temporary adhesive to the back of these paper masks that I cut with the dies because I'm going to add some splatter, which, I'm not great with splatter, so I was really excited that this turned out. I started with my number 2 brush. It was not nearly big enough, so I switched to a 6, and then I have the jet black ink spray, and so I just flick that on. I'm careful not to go overboard. And then here we go. So I trimmed it with a Deckle edge rectangle die, and then I backed it with some lime green cardstock, and that is the finished card. I so enjoyed this project, and I hope that you guys did too. Be sure to follow along on the Instagram hop. There are 39 people on the hop, and that means there's 39 chances for you to win a $15 gift certificate. They're also giving away some $50 gift certificates. So definitely be sure to follow along on the hop. There's loads of inspiration. Be sure to check out my new website at notableink.com so that you can find more inspiration is there. And I will link a couple more videos at the end. Thanks so much for stopping by. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. And that bell button, if you click it, will notify you of any new videos as they come along. Thanks again. Have a good day.